Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another live stream, and thank you so much for tuning in for another show. Benjamin Netanyahu landed in Washington to meet President Donald Trump, and he already met with him twice today. More talks are coming out about the focus being solely on Gaza, unlike previous reports that we heard that they will be talking about agreements between countries. Iran, no. Donald Trump said the talks will be focusing primarily on the Gaza Strip. Benjamin Netanyahu declared now that Israel accepted the Witkoff agreement. We're still not entirely sure if he means the amended one. After the Hamas proposals, reports coming from Israel speak about only one thing that's stopping the actual deal. However, American officials are speaking about pressure. A lot of pressure coming from the United States to close a deal inside of the Gaza Strip. Benjamin Netanyahu also received terrible calls when he was with President Trump in relation to the huge Palestinian resistance ambush in North Gaza, in the Beit Hanun area. We will be talking about that and about the recent image and footage that was published by Ansarullah taking down a ship in the Red Sea, and all of the reports that are coming in. We will begin with the report in relation to Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump and what they spoke about and the prospect of reaching a ceasefire. Reports in Israel are talking about two intense meetings between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, talking about primarily the deal inside of the Gaza Strip and not talking about anything else in relation to other countries in the region. There were recent reports that Israel is going to talk about the Abraham Accords. It's going to talk about Iran. It wants reassurance from the United States about all of the deals of Iran's nuclear program, and they want to have assurances that they can act against Iran, certain countries joining a peace treaty with Israel. And at the time, we spoke about the fact that Israel is trying to make things appear more than what they are, regardless of how far it has reached with other Arab states in relation to either security agreements or potentially normalization talks, despite contrary reports in recent days coming from Israel, toning it down, at least in relation to some of these peace treaties. So, what did they talk about, and what exactly happened in that meeting, or in those two meetings between Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, and how likely are we to reach a deal anytime soon inside of the Gaza Strip? Firstly, it's not only the meeting that's happening between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Senior delegations of the PIJ, as a matter of fact, the most senior delegation of the PIJ, or the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, which is the second largest armed resistance group inside of the Gaza Strip, are in Doha. The Secretary General of the movement doesn't usually attend direct meetings unless there are really advanced progresses in relation to the ceasefire, similar to how he was joining the Hamas leadership in Egypt back in 2014 and in other years as well, where there were escalations between Israel and the Gaza Strip. There's also a senior delegation coming from Qatar in Washington. The top officials and everyone is meeting and waiting on the outcome of those talks between Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu. Trump, in the second meeting, or one of the meetings that he had with Netanyahu, is saying we're almost exclusively talking about the Gaza Strip. We're not talking about other details. And now the reports are that there's one obstacle remaining, and that obstacle is Benjamin Netanyahu withdrawing from what he calls the Morag line on top of the Gaza, on top of the Philadelphia corridor. That is an area that Israel occupied and has a plan with the Gaza Strip for. What is the plan of Israel? Well, the plan of Israel is to completely occupy the Rafah area, create it into what Israel calls a humanitarian zone. That zone will have all of the Palestinian population in, and they will only have access to the aid from that area alongside the GHF. The GHF will be dealing all of the aid into the Gaza Strip. Why is Israel having this plan, and what do they actually want? Well, the plan is to eventually expel the population. That's why they're trying to send all of them down south to the most southern part as possible. And to clarify more about this area here, as you can see in this map, you're talking about this line over here. See this line? This is called Israel calls this the Morag line. Okay, this is the Philadelphia corridor, which Israel has control over, not stopping any weapon smuggling to the Gaza Strip, as confirmed by Major General Itzhak Brig that I spoke about the other day. But they're planning to create this humanitarian zone here, according to Israel, again, humanitarian zone, and send the population there so that the Palestinian authorities inside of the Gaza Strip won't be dealing with any sort of aid going into Gaza. But that's part of a bigger and more malicious plan, which is creating the idea within the Palestinian society and civilians in Gaza that if you want aid, you want to be in that area. And Israel already said that if anyone arrives to get that to that area, as confirmed by the Israeli defense minister, or more accurately, genocide minister, they won't be able to return to the other areas. What does that say? That says that they want to bring people from all of the parts of the Gaza Strip, south, central, and north, to the Rafah area that Israel controls, keep them there by telling them you're only going to have aid in this area, and then have a plan to expel them into Egypt, something that, of course, Egypt refused many times. Why is there another reason that they want to remain in that area as well? It's because Israel also started to support armed militias, many of them connected with ISIS directly, in the area of Rafah. As a matter of fact, the armed terrorists who operate with the genocide forces of the Israeli forces, the Israeli terror forces, they are based in the eastern Rafah area. This is the same area that the aid goes in from. This is Kerem Shalom or Karm Abu Salem, one of the main areas that aid is going into the Gaza Strip, as approved by Israel. And Israel also wants to dictate the type of aid going in to support Israeli economy, by the way, because some of the companies would get support, potentially funding from the government, to get that aid inside of the Gaza Strip, and Israel could dictate and do, of course, malicious things as well, like putting drugs in flour. That, according to the reports, is the main reason or the main obstacle facing Benjamin Netanyahu, or facing the whole potential of reaching a ceasefire. What does that say about the position of Benjamin Netanyahu? Because, by the way, now there are calls for an all-out deal, so we might have a surprise where there wouldn't be a declaration of a 60-day ceasefire, but an all-out deal and a declaration of ending the war and the release of all of the Israeli prisoners of war in exchange for a complete ending of the war, because Donald Trump directly, according to several reports, will be in charge of the continuation of the negotiations to do with the ending of the war. But again, there might be a surprise coming there before that. The talks were still about releasing 10 Israeli prisoners of war, 8 on the first day, 2 on the 50th day. 3 stages of release. Some of the bodies will be released too. But according to multiple reports, the American pressure and the Trump pressure against Benjamin Netanyahu is very heavy. Multiple reports came and said that the Americans are applying a lot of pressure, that Trump plans to exert heavy pressure on Netanyahu to end the war in Gaza. American pressure on Israel has begun, and tonight it will be heavy, said one American source to Sky News. A Middle Eastern diplomatic source quoted by Sky News also confirmed that American pressure will be strong. They're emphasizing that they're talking about sensitive issues and that all of the talks are in relation to Gaza. And Steve Witkoff, Trump's main envoy to Gaza or to Israel, and the talks about the ceasefire, he also said that the number of issues in dispute had been reduced from 4 to 1, and he also expressed hope that an agreement could be reached by the end of this week. And of course, according to the reports, the Morag axis is the area of controversy. That's the area that I spoke with you about here for Benjamin Netanyahu to plan to expel the population in a later stage. And of course, everyone is applying pressure on Donald Trump now, especially the families of prisoners of war, many of whom are already present inside of the United States, to apply pressure and of course prepare for any dramatic announcements coming out. What does the reduction from 4 points to 1 mean exactly? Well, we need to understand the context. We must contextualize to understand where we are at and to establish a real, correct idea on what's happening and not get dragged by the headlines or by, of course, the propaganda too. What are Benjamin Netanyahu's aims of the war, and what were the initial declared objectives of the war? The initial declared objectives of the war were to eliminate Hamas, make sure Gaza doesn't pose a threat again, and release all of the Israeli prisoners of war. As a matter of fact, Netanyahu said, if possible, at one point, and that was secondary to eliminating Hamas. What is he saying now? He's saying defeating Hamas. He is talking about the fact that Hamas has been defeated, something that the Palestinian movement responded to. There was a response coming from a man called Izzat al-Rishq. Izzat al-Rishq is a representative of Hamas who said that the statement of Netanyahu about releasing everyone and the fact that Hamas actually submitted, because there were reports that Netanyahu saying Hamas basically surrendered, reflects the delusions of the self-defeat, not the truth on the ground and not the reality on the battleground. Why is he saying that, and what is the reality of the battleground? Well, the reality of the battleground is all of the resistance movements that we saw in recent days, especially the recent ambush that was carried out in none other than Beit Hanun, which is the most northern city in Gaza that has already been destroyed in October to November 2023, with an ambush that Israel confirmed killed at least 6 soldiers, with at least over 13 wounded. And again, these are the numbers confirmed by Israel, and they do not reflect usually the real numbers of the casualties that Israel suffers inside of the Gaza Strip. And if we have a look at this map, we will see that Beit Hanun is this area over here. Beit Hanun is the closest area to Israel and the closest area to Erez, the Erez checkpoint. This is the crossing between Gaza to Israel. Israel again destroyed it back in 2023, and they declared that they were over with the destruction of Beit Hanun, only for Beit Hanun to come up time after time and prove that it's an area that is still resisting Israel is still, landing heavy blows against the genocide forces. And if you want some of the, there are a lot of destruction images, but these are just some of them here. If you have a basic Google search, you will see what Beit Hanun looks like. It's completely destroyed. So what happened exactly in Beit Hanun today, and what was the terrible phone call that Benjamin Netanyahu got after he went to the United States? Again, a huge ambush inside of Beit Hanun with 6 people killed. 6 IDF terror forces killed in Beit Hanun with over 13 wounded, as confirmed by Israel. This wasn't the only operation. There was another very serious security incident in Khan Yunis today, with Israel applying censorship on the news. This was supposed to be censored, but Israel could no longer censor it because there were already reports circulating on Telegram in uncensored channels in Israel. The families of these people already knew. So from an Israeli perspective, they just had to go ahead and confirm what has been stated in those reports and try and minimize as much as possible. Who was killed? Well, the people who were killed were from a brigade called Netzach Yehuda, which is part of the Kfir division, or just smaller than a division. That's made out of primarily squatters from the West Bank, so religious Zionists, basically. This division, Netzach Yehuda, or the Eternity of Judea, was supposed to only be involving the Orthodox who want to join the army. It was supposed to be a religious type of brigade in the Israeli army. However, with time, it started to attract more of the religious Zionists, so the establishment, of course, of the West Bank, the people who follow Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, and now those very few who do join from the Orthodox community, and they are very, very few, they are joining a brigade called the Hashmonaim brigade that is not very active in combat inside of Gaza. Who is controlling Beit Hanun from the Palestinian resistance? The Palestinian resistance is still has many leaders, and they still carry out very strong operations. It's led, the brigade of Beit Hanun, from Al-Qassam brigades, because this was an operation by Al-Qassam brigades. He's called Abu Hamza Fayyad. Abu Hamza Fayyad, or Hussein Fayyad, he was announced dead by Israel back in several months back, only for him to appear later on and for everyone to see him. And he said that, no, I wasn't killed and I'm still here, still alive. And he was seen during the ceasefire going out and, checking everything inside of the Beit Hanun. And he had a video of him recorded. That's him walking normally. And that's during the ceasefire, by the way, because there was clearly an agreement that Israel doesn't target, Hamas forced a condition that Israel doesn't target anyone from the Palestinian resistance. He was roaming around freely, and there were reports that he was seen during the genocide as well, walking over the ground between the people, checking on the population and checking on the Palestinian resistance fighters too. Fayyad is a man who is a very strong believer. I mean, his characteristics, he has a very strong faith, this man, and he made several statements previously in relation to the resistance, the situation of the resistance and what they're at. And he famously was quoted saying once that, they tell us, oh, look, Egypt is not with you, or Saudi Arabia is not with you, or Jordan is not with you, as in, the authorities or countries backing them. And he always used to say, when God is with you, you don't need anyone else. And it only matters if God is with you to be victorious. And if he wants you to be victorious, you can only be one, and you will be victorious. So that's the mentality that's running the Palestinian resistance. And again, the armed wing of Hamas now is led by a man called Izz al-Din al-Haddad, who is one of the brigade leaders, but there are now reports that he's controlling the armed wing, and he's leading the most intense consecutive blows against Israel. In the past 2 months, we have seen numbers of attacks coming from the Palestinian resistance against Israel that are considered to be high security or very tense, very sensitive security incidents as confirmed by Israel. And then Israel would, of course, impose a censorship on them, so they wouldn't allow them to be made public. Only afterwards they will kind of confirm it. With relation to these attacks, they increased in such a heavy way that it wasn't seen before. So clearly, from a Palestinian resistance perspective, the more time went by, the more they grew stronger. And Israel is confirming that now. Israel is saying that now we have 40,000 Palestinian resistance fighters inside of the Gaza Strip. And the fact that Israel is even confirming these things shows you how much of an embarrassment it is to Israel. In the meantime, the spokesperson of Al-Qassam Brigades, he had a statement today, and he said that this very complex attack in Beit Hanun is a strike against the silly, stupid Israeli army and one of its most brutal or genocidal brigades inside of the Gaza Strip. Of course, I told you it's made out of the religious Zionists, the Kfir Brigade and the Kfir Division and the Netzach Yehuda Brigade. This, by the way, was a brigade that Biden sanctioned at one point, when there were talks about sanctioning certain elements within the IDF. But it was later removed. And Abu Ubaidah said that the most stupid move that can come from Benjamin Netanyahu is to keep his forces inside of the Gaza Strip. If Benjamin Netanyahu wants to make such a decision, that they will be getting much, much more serious blows and strikes from the Palestinian resistance. So we're understanding that there's an escalation of attacks at the same time that Benjamin Netanyahu is visiting the United States. As a matter of fact, Benjamin Netanyahu, he came up with a statement, or one of his statements when he was in the United States, saying that there was a tragedy in Gaza and we lost 5 of our brave soldiers. Very sad, very upset to get this report. There wasn't a lot of sympathy shown from the people surrounding him. Clearly, the talks were about just hurry up and let's get this process over and done with. But from the Palestinian perspective, it's proving how much the moves of the Palestinian resistance are pushing towards the ceasefire. All of the talk about like eliminating the resistance or, the resistance not being capable clearly have no basis whatsoever, especially after these fierce attacks coming from the Palestinian resistance. This shows that the deal, any deal that we're talking about here and that might be declared in a few days' time that the Americans are applying pressure for or to obtain, is clearly going to be a deal that's going to keep Hamas in Gaza, because there is no alternative. Israel failed to impose an alternative. The people who operate with Israel, the armed militias tied with ISIS who operate with Israel, are very weak and incapable in relation to the Palestinian resistance. They have no presence apart from alongside Israel, so it's not like they even can provide an alternative. Any other armed groups inside of Gaza are hand in hand with the authorities of Gaza and with the Palestinian resistance too. And that means that Netanyahu even gave up the day after. So how many concessions do we have now? There's no more talk about ending the war. There's no more talk about who rules Gaza the day after. There's only talks about one certain location that Israel is saying now that it doesn't want to withdraw from. Netanyahu is not talking about eliminating Hamas, and even the talks about disarming Gaza or making Gaza doesn't pose a threat again, expelling some of the resistance leaders to outside of the Gaza Strip. All of these things are no longer on the table. And that's why Benjamin Netanyahu today, in one of his statements, he said that the less we talk, the better it is. And the more we talk, we can cause more problems. And from his perspective, the problems would be problems from back home with an immediate threat to a coalition, although there have been reports that the people who are threatening to resign from the Israeli government already were fine with the concept of, that Benjamin Netanyahu might sell them. He will sell them the idea that, oh yeah, Hamas surrendered. They're no longer going to pose a threat, and we're going to get to a deal, and we're going to bring back all of the prisoners of war. So these are the developments. So far, only one thing remaining, but based on the concessions that we had before, that one limit of Benjamin Netanyahu, or one red line now that, because the red line always changes to him. It went from ending the war to now just removing the genocide terror forces from the Murag axis. That can also be eliminated too, but he is in the United States. He is speaking with Donald Trump. He had 2 meetings with him. The Americans are saying they're applying pressure, and pressure will be intense tonight too. Trump is saying that we're exclusively going to be talking about Gaza because clearly Trump does want to end it as well. And there could be expected statements coming from the United States at any given point. So the next few days will be vital to monitor every single word that's coming out and understand if there would be or a deal, or if there wouldn't be a deal. And of course, if it is declared, what it actually includes. In the meantime, and that's the other thing that I wanted to talk to you about, there were more videos published by Ansarullah of them taking over the Magic Seas. Ansarullah published this video today. Let's have a look, and we will talk about all of the details. So that was the video that came from Yemen today about them taking down this ship in the Red Sea. What are the messages coming from Ansarullah, and how is that going to affect any potential prospect of anyone supporting Israel economically, so long as there is a genocide? Well, number one, the intensity of the attacks of Yemen inside of the Red Sea hasn't decreased whatsoever. they are still imposing an embargo and punishing everyone who goes against this embargo. Why? Because they would be breaching this embargo and trying to support a genocidal entity and its economy in conducting a genocide and killing innocent civilians in Gaza. It's very simple. It doesn't require a lot of interpretation. But the other very important thing is the ease at which Ansarullah can conduct this operation without any response coming from anyone who is allied with Israel. The United States primarily, and the United Kingdom, aka the Genocide Coalition. Why? Because they already reached a deal with Yemen. They're no longer having any sort of attacks against Yemen in support of Israel. The Genocide Coalition was formed to support Israel, and they were conducting all of these attacks using, of course, their taxpayers' money to support Israel and lift all of this pressure and this economic pressure from Israel. But now the Israelis are left alone. And if they're left alone, they don't have the capacity to protect any sort of ship trying to conduct or breach this embargo being imposed by Ansarullah. This is a very, very serious message, especially the ease at which the Yemenis can conduct these operations, and they're recording them and they're deciding to take the ship down too. And that is a very, very strong message, by the way, to anyone who is even thinking about, going and supporting Israel from the Red Sea. It isn't going to happen. So the Yemeni actions are continuing. This is coming one day after they launched 11 attacks against Israel with hypersonic ballistic missiles and drones on multiple parts. The day before, when they targeted the Ben Gurion airport simultaneously with Netanyahu's departure to Washington, and they didn't do that for the first time. Again, proving the position of Yemen of total support up until the genocide ends and the siege is lifted off the Gaza Strip. And we are expected to even see more unless there is an outright declaration. And the important bit about this is the fact that their attacks are completely coordinated, by the way, with the Palestinian resistance. So even if they, for example, took some prisoners and there's a deal, they would ask for the approval of the Palestinian resistance to release any of them, with their, of course, lines of communication with the Palestinians. So their attacks are still there up until there is a declaration to end the genocide and lift the siege of the Gaza Strip. And these were the main things that I wanted to share with you in this live stream. I hope I added some beneficial information for you. We'll open the space up for some community participation for some of the time that we have left in this live stream. And thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in for another show. Thank you, everyone participating in the chat as well. If anyone has any input, if you wouldn't mind highlighting them. We'll start off with TMZBGD. What do you think the US means when they say they'll be pressuring? Is not real. I mean, always seems like it's always the US blowing to Israeli pressure when it matters most. Well, look, I mean, of course, everyone is entitled to be totally skeptical. Many people, of course, are also pessimistic too. There is no justification for pessimism because the main aim is to read the developments on the ground. But when the United States means pressuring Israel, we need to understand where we have reached so far and what the United States already did. Of course, all of the talk can be talk. However, when is this happening? Firstly, we're 22 months into this genocide. Israel already tried to eliminate the Palestinian resistance with full support from the United States. Donald Trump, who wanted to have a ceasefire as soon as he came into office, was asked by Benjamin Netanyahu to be provided with just a few more months. Donald Trump gave him a few more months and nothing happened. Israel could not defeat the Palestinian resistance, and the Palestinian resistance increased its attacks against Israel in a very, very intense manner. Israel decided to go on a war with Iran, despite the fact that the United States told them, we don't want you to go into a war with Iran, or we wouldn't be participating as well in any war you go into with Iran, as in direct participation and from the beginning. Later on, the United States did participate with one attack. That wasn't effective to take down the nuclear program or even severely harm Iran's capabilities. So, from an Israeli perspective, again, the United States told them, look, we've had the deal and now you can claim the win and let's get it over and done with. So we have a couple of reasons. Number one, there is no way to defeat the Palestinian resistance. That's number one. Number two, well, Benjamin Netanyahu already tried everything and he failed. It shows you the failure and the limitation of Israel. They constantly want to appear as if, they can do whatever they want and dictate what they want in the region, but that's not the case. And that has been visible in all fronts. And we will start off, of course, with Gaza. Gaza is the main front, and that front, Israel couldn't do anything to defeat the Palestinian resistance despite all of that destruction. So from an American perspective, Israel already exerted all of the capabilities, and it's enough, let alone, of course, all of the other reasons internally inside of Israel to end the war, because the army is defeated, the army has been humiliated, and they no longer have the capacity to continue. They don't have enough people. They've lost tens of thousands of people as well. And it simply cannot continue in that manner. And I hope that clarifies the situation of the Americans in relation to the ceasefire. And of course, look, again, this happened today, literally, when Benjamin Netanyahu was sitting with Trump, as if it's, reserved for the day. Joe, how is the situation in Israel, especially in regards to what Iran did? Well, Iran conducted very effective attacks on Israel, on its energy sector, on its military bases, and on very important strategic locations to do with the command and control, with the political establishment, intelligence, military, and economic locations, to gas fields as well. So the attack was very effective from Iran. And today, Israel also said, or confirmed for the first time, that some of the bases were actually hit. Therefore, confirming that, well, at least Iran landed these attacks on Israel, and now they're confirming. So that also contributes to the situation in reaching a deal, and not just the American pressure. Of course, the pressure is there, and we spoke about the reports today, the heavy pressure coming from Donald Trump, and Americans confirming that there will be more pressure tonight on Benjamin Netanyahu to end the war. So all of these things are included together. Gulliberg Mahmoud, do you think many have blackmailed US politicians were happy to see the Iranian missiles raining down Israel? Probably. Today, Donald Trump was, putting Mike Huckabee, the American ambassador to Israel, in quite a difficult position. There was actually a video being published where he was sitting with him and he told him, "Oh, I told you, like, it's going to be tough if you take the job." But he decided to still go ahead. Actually, let me share that video quickly with you. Have a look at this video.
By the way, we have a man with us who thought this was going to be a very glamorous, easy job. He's the ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, former governor, former everything. I'd say he's a former everything, and respected and loved by everybody. And he loves Israel. He loves the state of Israel, and nobody loves it much more. And he's not Jewish, and he loves Israel. And he wanted to be there. I said, Mike, it could be dangerous. No. Well, at least I was right about that. He was in every bunker you could be in. He was running around from bunker to bunker, but he's still with us, fortunately, and he's done a great job. Would you say a few words, Mike?
Just want to say what an honor it is to serve you, Mr. President, and to see a historic horizon.
So you see, telling him he was running from from bunker to bunker. So yeah, probably some of them were happy to see that. I mean, many people were happy, but they didn't really say it. Mahmoud from Ned, what is going on in the West Bank? Well, the West Bank is still under the apartheid ongoing regime in the West Bank. So from an Israeli perspective, they just approved more in recent months, more buildings inside of the West Bank, establish more settlements, or what they call settlements, more land grabbing coming from the Palestinian, from the Israeli side, taking away Palestinian lands. There are always attacks coming from the squatters of the West Bank against the Palestinians, backed by the Israeli terror forces of the IDF. But there were also tensions in recent days internally between the Israeli army and the settlers, to a level where it reached violence, and it reached the top political levels where, people are trying to calm things down. Because, of course, these people over there, they're fully supported and funded by the state. As a matter of fact, many of them are American. They come from the United States to basically live for free and, get supported and what have you. And lots of the funding comes from the United States too, to the establishment in the West Bank. But from a day-to-day perspective, there are quieter days than, for example, in recent months. And the situation, as in the day-to-day life, is still the same, unfortunately, for the Palestinian citizens. And that's a reality that has been there for decades, ever since the West Bank was occupied in 1967. Jimmy, I heard most of the tunnel network in Gaza is still in place and the tunnel still existing to Egypt. Any facts to this? Well, of course, no one can come and prove for fact, as like images or what have you, because otherwise that would be a weak point. If Israel and the United States and many other allies of Israel tried to take down this tunnel system and they failed, how are we going to know the true scale of what they do in Gaza? And that's, of course, a strong point for the Palestinian resistance. However, we can judge that based on various factors. Number one, well, there are still attacks coming against the genocide forces, right? So that means that the tunnel system is still working. Secondly, there are more confirmations from Israeli officials and people in the army, like there have been since the beginning, that this tunnel network hasn't been affected. The recent Major General who I quoted, Breek, said that the tunnels from the Philadelphia corridor are still operational too, because Israel has no capacity to take them down. And with every kind of war that you have, you need to have some sort of supply of something. I mean, there are no indefinite numbers of everything that you need. One of the main reasons that Israel stopped with Iran is the fact that they used in 12 days what the United States can manufacture in 2 years in terms of THAAD missiles only. And we're not talking about Arrow and David Sling that are, of course, also jointly manufactured, at least the Arrow missiles, by the United States too. However, the Palestinian resistance is still able to conduct all of these operations and intensify them, as we can see, to a level where it can't be hidden even by Israel. So all of these are proving that they're still effective and they are still operational inside of Gaza, and they're not going anywhere because, look, the American administration, some elements within the United States were advising to gas the tunnels. They tried to, and Israel indeed, by the way, landed bombs that created gas as a secondary measure. That happens, by the way, and they killed Israelis who were in tunnels as well. But all of that didn't work, did it? None of that worked. Plus, it's not like all of the systems are all connected, together in all parts. No, they have levels, they have depths, they have alternatives, and they are constantly also being built too. And thank you for that. That was from Jimmy. TM, do we know anything about the main points of the ceasefire proposed? And are there any reassurances that Israel is not real, won't break them this time? Good question. Well, there are two ways to approach that. Number one, the way of the traditional reports or the regular reports that came in that spoke about the fact that this is going to be another temporary ceasefire, not a complete ending of the war. All of them spoke about ending the hostilities, the release of some prisoners of war. Palestinians will be released too. Aid will be going in. There were technical, exchanges or amendments requested by the Palestinian side, especially in relation to the withdrawal, where to, how long they can stay, who's going to run the show in terms of aid, all of these things. But what is for sure now is that there is an all-out deal on the table too. So it's not just talking about a potential temporary ceasefire, even if it may be, sold as such or public as such, but there is a very big prospect that there will be a declaration of the end of the war completely, because even the American president talking about the start of peace or the start of a peace process. Now, of course, we know that peace isn't possible with a supremacist terror regime at the end of the day. But the idea is to have reduced tensions for a very prolonged period. Previous statements that came from Israel spoke about a deal that will have a potential of 7 to 10 years. So there will be a confirmation to end hostilities for a prolonged period. And we need to remember that the breaches that came from Israel and from the United States didn't come only because this is in the nature of Israel and the United States and the colonial and supremacist powers to be treacherous against other parties. It's also because of Benjamin Netanyahu and his political progress and his selfish personal interests. It wasn't for the state as a whole or what have you. No, it wasn't just that. Of course, Israel enables that as a country. It started as such. But we need to understand that a lot of the breaches and in many cases when the ceasefire was broken by Israel, it was only for the sake of Benjamin Netanyahu. It wasn't for anything else. Because what was he promising the people? He was promising the people that only give me a bit more time and I will get it resolved. I will eliminate the Hamas or what have you, and then we will be safer for generations to come. Where did all of that go today? It didn't go anywhere. As a matter of fact, we are seeing more power from the Palestinian resistance against the depraved terror forces of Israel. And the reassurances, that's another good point. One of the reasons that there were always delays is that the Palestinian side wanted more confirmed reassurances. Now, apparently, the main reassurance is going to come from the American president. Again, another very, not very trustworthy, guarantor here. But there would clearly be certain agreements that could, protect a potential ceasefire. And one of the things, by the way, that could potentially protect it is the fact that in the talks of the day after, by the way, there are also talks of American investment in Gaza. Didn't Trump say, I'm going to create the Riviera and what have you? Now, we're not going to say that this plan is going to go ahead or it's going to be at the scale or level that Trump is portraying it to be, with a golden statue of him in Gaza. But American interests or investments inside of Gaza would also form a level of guarantee against any Israeli attacks. And remember when Trump was saying, oh yeah, we want to control it, we want to buy Gaza, or we want to take Gaza and all of that. Again, take away the silly element out of it. There are talks here about the United States having certain interests inside of Gaza too. And not just, the Palestinians getting the support from, the just only Arab states or, major donors supporting the rebuilding process. And let's go to your next input quickly. Just 1 second. Faint signals and Ioannis, thank you very much. From Ireland, thank you very much, and cheers to everyone listening from Ireland. Larry J. Bain, what are your thoughts on Zohran Mamdani, who is running for the mayor of New York City? Thank you for all the work you do. Give us more. Oh, pleasure, no problem. Well, to be completely honest with you, I mean, I haven't looked into his whole resume or, all of his previous history, but from the things that I saw very, very good positions from him, especially, when they constantly try and apply pressure on all of the candidates, anyone running for mayor, anyone who has any potential, to kneel down to Israel. And the man clearly stood bravely, especially when, they were asking them, oh, which country are you going to visit first? And, they were like, Israel. And he said, I'm going to be in New York City, serving my constituents. And the fact that the Zionists are displeased with him, that says a lot. So anyone who, of course, has anti-Zionist positions, and he, from what I saw, again, with my limited observation, he has plans to, of course, actually work for the people, unlike the oligarchs who usually take these positions and work on behalf of foreign entities and to feed their own greed and pockets as well and increase them. He genuinely seems like he's, you know, working for the people of New York and is not submitting to the Zionists, which is good. And there needs to be more people like that. And that's a huge shift, by the way. You know, the fact that he reached where he reached so far, that is a huge progress. And mind you, there's going to be a lot of propaganda and there's going to be a lot of attempts to take him down, especially anyone who is anti-Zionist, which is basically anti-depravity and anti-everything bad on earth, gets media crucifixion. They're crucified by the mainstream and corporate media. And what's important for people like that is to not be in the defensive position. It's important for people like that to be focusing on what they need to do. And if those people, especially on the Zionist side, come at him, no, you focus on the real issue, because they always want to divert the attention. Although the man hasn't said anything like they can't even like hold a statement against him. But again, you know, they're gonna try. They're gonna try. But yeah, I mean, in brief, this is what I think from of course what I saw, and hopefully, look, more and more people will break this two-party politics thing, because the two-party politics is a very carefully engineered thing. You have people who pretend and say things to the public to get the votes, when at the same time they're working for the same policies and working to do the same things. As a matter of fact, even if you want to speak about left and right, like you'll see some countries, some Western countries, you'll see a right-wing leader here, a left-wing leader there, and it would be difficult for you to understand what's really different about them. So it's important for people to come and break this norm. And in the United States, it's evident because both of them, both parties, they seek the money from the same people. So they will go and try and beg, you know, those who have the money to support them. Because what is the United States? The United States is a militaristic oligarchy. An oligarchy run by money and expands by force. As you know, as an establishment. And the money controls all of that. But when you have people who break out from this, it's a very, very important thing. Muhammad, how many Israeli troops have been killed since the start of this war? This is a statistics that of course, Israel would not publish. Their official death toll is approximately 1,300, something like that. But there have been certain things that were released to the public that indicate the number we could be looking at. For example, after 3 months of the war, there were reports in Israel that hospitals accepted over 20,000 Israeli soldiers. Okay. If we want to take this statistic and spread it to now, what are we talking about? 80,000 Israeli soldiers who went to hospital, or let's say were wounded. Let's go on the conservative side and say, do you know what? 60,000. Let's say, and we're being conservative here. What is the average ratio of a soldier killed per soldiers injured in any urban warfare? It's 1 to 3. So for everyone, you have 3. So over 15,000 if you want to take that. Or if you want to say 80,000 wounded, you're talking about 20,000 killed. Based on the estimates of the wounded and the nature of the attacks that are being conducted against them. But then you have to factor in that Gaza is not an urban warfare. Gaza is a genocide and mass destruction. And you cannot take normal ratios to do with urban warfare and apply them on Gaza to try and come up with an estimate to do with the level of casualties inside of the Gaza Strip. Why? Because the likelihood of more people being killed is much higher. These people are walking around between, rubble 24/7, and they're getting attacks and they're not being protected. So all of these things, they need to be factored in. But again, these things could be kept secret for a very, very, very long time. So it's not very likely to know the exact details, but all that we can get is an estimate from the figures that are coming from Israel of the wounded, from the longevity, and of course from the crisis that Israel is living in. And thank you so much. We'll wrap it up here, guys. Thank you so much again for participating. Thank you so much for everyone who sent messages. Apologies if I haven't reached, of course, all of your contribution just due to the time limit. But I appreciate your contribution and input. Thank you so much for Faint and Ioannis for your supers. I'll hopefully have some segments for you, for those of you who prefer shorter videos based on some of the subjects that we spoke about. We'll hopefully be with you tomorrow as well, with most likely, again, another live stream. Depends on the progress and developments. In the meantime, everyone, stay blessed, take care, and I will see you soon in the next video. Peace, everyone. Salam.